Good afternoon, dear journalists. We are going to start our press conference related to such topic and the problems with the Ukrainians who lost in this or another way their passports and territory of the occupied Crimea, and how such citizens can leave the occupied territory of the Crimea. This is a problem which we are going to discuss today. Is going to be illustrated and based on the example of the person who joined us today, who managed in some way to leave the Crimea, and what problems he faced afterwards. I'm talking about Serhiy Antonenko, a citizen of Ukraine who actually found himself in the Crimea and who had to come through all those ordeals and misfortunes. Also, we have with us Serhiy Zayets, lawyer at the Regional Center of Human Rights, who is going to advise and make recommendation what should be done. What can be done by those people who find themselves in such dire straits, who visit the Crimea, and also it pertains to the citizens of Ukraine who reside today on the territory of Ukraine and who have not been issued the Russian Federation passport. They have only the passport of Ukraine, but they somehow lost their passports. My name is Tetyana Pechonchyk. I represent here the Information Center for Human Rights, and I'm going to be the moderator of this press conference. First, I would like to turn the mic to Serhiy for him to tell his story. Good morning. My name is Serhiy. And since the moment of the annexation of the Crimea, actually I went to the Crimea for the first time, and some of the I didn't know some of the nuances of the legislation. But in those days, it so happened that I was going to visit the Crimea for 3 days, and actually I didn't have too much money, and actually I planned my 3-day trips only. I went there on the 6th of June and I went to Serhiy and came back on July the 1st. It means 24 days I stayed there. On the 16th day, somebody stole all my IDs, including passport. The local policeman helped me to launch the criminal case. Related to the so-called thieves. They issued me some kind of paper document that I'm a citizen of Ukraine, and I lost all my documents, IDs, and also the piece of document that they launched the criminal case. And they told me that it will be enough for me to cross the border without any documents. So I reached the borderline in Armyansk, and I encountered them, the border guards. They took me away. They filmed myself, and they actually told me about that I crossed the Russian Federation border and frontier, and referring to some kind of provisions in the agreement between the countries, that the citizens of Ukraine can actually cross the Russian Federation border, provided it has some kind of IDs, or at least a passport. So they declined. They refused to let me go, and they sent me to Rostov-on-Don, the nearest consulate of Ukraine. I asked them, how can I actually reach the Russian Federation territory? They said, it's your problem. Your consulate is located there, so you have to take care and decide how you're going to reach that. Owing to my friends' assistance and TV channel and Serhiy specifically, I managed to get to the consulate about 2 days later. But it happened that they celebrated the Day of Constitution, so it was a day off. On 27th and 28th of June. And actually, it's next to impossible to find some accommodation in hostel or the hotel. And I made acquaintance with my citizen in Ukraine, and he said, okay, we'll use my passport for you to have some accommodation. So in short, he helped me to take a hotel room. So in 2 days, we met the consul at 7 a.m. We joined the long line. I was the 72nd in this line. So when we approached the consul, I said that I have just the small document from the militia. I do not have the passport. And the consul told me that you have to pay about 5,000 rubles. You have to pay those two invoices or checks, and then we'll send the request for the restoration of your documents, your IDs, and only after that we can talk about your return to Ukraine. And he told me we would try to do it as soon as possible, but he said I do not know how soon it would be, and he said I needed to be really to decide this problem as quick as possible because I do not have enough money. And he said, you took that risk while going to the Crimea, so the responsibility lies specifically with you. So as soon as I got some of the, when there was some kind of a call, and in 2 hours after that, I was issued the documents without any payment. And it turned out to be that if you do not have money, you can just write some kind of application and please issue me documents without any payments, I mean without any calls. But the consul did not tell me that. So if you pay the money, you join the line on your right. If you do not have pay the money, you join the line on the left. So I would like to ask Serhiy Zayets to comment on this situation. Thank you, Tetyana. This problem, in fact, has two different aspects. Number one, how the Ukrainian citizens, what they can do while find themselves on the territory of the Crimea. The second aspect, the attitude on the part of the officials to their own citizens. Starting from the second one, we can see this kind of neglected attitude to this. There's no irony, this kind of abuse or the humiliation when the Ukrainian consulate welcomes or congratulates the Ukrainian citizens on their constitution, telling them that they do not work on this day, and according to our constitution, the biggest value of our country is our people. The consul, the person who must actually provide assistance to Ukrainian citizens who found themselves in the difficult situation while in a foreign country, and this situation can be encountered not only in the Crimea, and we can see that to our government, to our country, their own citizens kind of a burden. I don't know. Take an example of the United States. They have the image of the country which will take care of their own citizens wherever they can find themselves in. And there is another image of Ukraine. When we are talking about the Crimea, perhaps we have to take care, specifically if we are talking about the Crimea, they have to take care of the following. When the Ukrainian passport, be regarded by the citizens of Ukraine the valuable thing, and that the belonging to citizenship of Ukraine means that wherever you find yourself, your government, your country is going to help you. In this specific situation, we can see kind of neglection on the part of the council, and I don't know how to call it, some kind of trying to trying to take the money from the citizens. We have to pay sometimes to Ukraine the money for some services. But when our people find themselves in a difficult situation abroad, and for example, when we say that the let's say the service costs, for example, $35, and they are issuing the paper which costs about $65. How we can treat that? Experts in our organization, the Regional Center for Human Rights, actually provided or gave recommendations and consultations how to return back to Ukraine, what has to be done. And the major role was played here by the journalists, only actually riveting the attention, drawing the attention to this situation. was instrumental in for the council to quickly issue the required documents. But the story, which I know for sure, because for all over the period of time we communicated whenever it was possible with Serhiy, it actually proves kind of abuse of the office on the part of the consul, the person who has to protect the interest of his countrymen and not to try to make money on that situation. For example, if it were not for the journalists, maybe that person can wait for months, waiting for his or her problems to be resolved. So I would like to call upon the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine to take care of the inspection of the work of the consulate offices in Ukraine, in foreign countries, and make them to turn their face and not back on our citizens. In fact, the MFA today bears a great responsibility for, to ensure that the citizens of Ukraine value their citizenship in order to maintain the contacts with the Crimea. Serhiy actually told me the story when the officials of the same consulate, they advised to the citizens who lost their documents, they advised them to decline their Ukrainian citizenship. I'm sorry, what does it mean? Are those the real officials of the Ukrainian state? There are not enough words to express my attitude toward that. This problem can emerge from time to time. I'm talking about the problems with the Ukrainian IDs or documents. When they find themselves in the territory of Crimea and you lose their documents, there is no chance for you to leave that territory. Even the Ukrainian border guards will not let you in, even if the Russian border guards will give you a permission to leave the territory. And but it's on the one hand, it's not possible to restore documents. On the other hand, what Serhiy did, this is kind of violation of the legislation. When you cross the Strait of Kerch, you actually leave the territory of Ukraine, and this is without documents, which is the violation of Ukrainian legislation, which is fraught with some kind of responsibility. So the Ukrainian state said that if you do not have the documents, you lost their documents on the territory of the Crimea, they say there's stay there, you can die there or not, we do not need you any longer. This is the fact. This is a big problem because to cross the Strait of Kerch without documents is very difficult. Serhiy managed to do that, but in fact, you need some documents to cross that strait, So here there are some problems on the part, if you're talking about the Ukrainian legislation and law, and on the part of the actual regulation rules of the Russian Federations, which are applied there. To prevent such situation or circumstances, we have to understand that the Russian Federation passports, which Ukrainian citizens were forced to be issued, they are not recognized anywhere. In providing this citizenship, it runs counter to all the norms and standards of international law. It means that those people gradually become the citizens without any citizenship. If they do not have the Ukrainian passport, they can be true about the children born there or those people whose IDs and passports were lost or they became, damaged by the water or whatever. What we can do to prevent such a situation, just we issued several Ukrainian passports, for example, the national passport, and several foreign passports issued in Ukraine, which could be kept in some safe places. So if you go to the Crimea, first of all, I do not share the idea being voiced very often by the pseudo-patriots of Ukraine that you shouldn't go to the Crimea. If we say that Crimea is a part of Ukraine, we have to maintain our contacts and we have to constantly remind of that to our citizens. And those who go to the Crimea, they have to think how to avoid such situation. and have one of their passports on this part of Ukraine. In God forbid, if something happens, maybe some other your acquaintances can actually send your another passport back to you. So those citizens who now reside in the Crimea, they can come here and be issued the foreign passport to Ukraine for traveling abroad. This will allow them to avoid such problem. But this problem, in the context of the international human rights problems, can be qualified as the violation of the freedom of movement. And this violation also, this is a violation both on the parts of Ukraine and the part of the Russian Federation. In this case, we are working on preparing this case to be sent to the European Human Rights Court, which we soon are going to submit there. So before we actually give the floor to journalists for the Q&A session, so my question is, you actually are going to address the European Human Rights Court regarding the violation on the freedom of movement, both on the part of Ukraine and the Russian Federation. So if we're talking about the legal aspect of that, what was this violation associated with? You see, the Crimea is the part of the territory of Ukraine, and those who actually find themselves on legal basis, legitimate stay in the Crimea, they have the right to move freely along within this territory, and those who do not give this permission, they violate this right. They do not have any kind of legitimate violation. So this can be qualified or regarded the violation. The Russian Federation, in fact, actually made or forced Serhiy to leave the territory of Ukraine. The Crimea is the part of the territory of Ukraine, and go to the Russian Federation territory. Also, this I regard as the violation of the freedom movement, because it's not only associated with when the forbid somebody to move freely on some territory, but also if they force somebody to leave some territory and cross the border. And actually the rules and regulations which have been adopted regarding the Crimea, when for example, this or now citizen cannot legally leave the territory of the Crimea from the point of view of legislation in Ukraine, this also is qualified as a violation of freedom of movement. Now we have the Q&A session. Are there any clarification or questions? So please introduce yourself. TV channel there. Serhiy, can you clarify? You said that you were going to stay there for 3 days, but you lost your passport on the 16th day. So more details about your trip. My girlfriend actually was accompanied me, who actually I accompanied her because she was going there in order to get your heritage. She was inherited to some of the, they had some notary who we addressed, and because they celebrated the Day of Russia, and they were 3 days in the vacation days off, and we had to spend some more days. That's why we spent there not 3 days but more. And during the last day we were late for the minivan, and we had to take the train to Nikolaev, which, Nikolaevka, not far from Simferopol, with the cheap lodgings or housing. So it so happened. So could you give some more details how you lost your passport? Can you evaluate what happened with you, how you assessed the actions on the part of the Ukrainian and Russian officials? Actually, my passport was stolen in the private hotel. They actually, it was kind of forced entrance. It was a burglary. But the local policeman, surprisingly, actually treated me rather well, despite the fact that they do not like the Ukrainian citizens. But the policemen did their job. Actually, on one of the policemen's private car, we went to the Simferopol in order to be issued this kind of document as soon as possible. So I cannot say anything bad about those guys. But the border guards, yes, that's true. When when I reached the Armyansk cross border checkpoint, some of the border guards, they said, Sergei, say goodbye to Ukraine. They kept me about 3 hours at the border, at the cross point, and it was really a hot day, about 35 degrees centigrade. And they said when I started to complain, they took me to a separate room. They switched on the video camera, treat me like a refugee, and they started to read me outline that you find yourself in the territory of the Russian Federation without any ID, and you violate the laws. We are going to read out loud your rights, etc. And they filmed all this on the camera. Then they left. Then called that policeman. They said, and I told him it so happened they did not allow me to cross the border, and he said we cannot do anything more than that. Everybody was living like that, and then thought maybe during the next shift of the border guards I can do that, but they already knew who I was, and they warned me that. If one more time I appear at the checkpoint without the document, they can actually arrest me or detain me at least for several days. So they said you can go to the Moscow consulate or the Rostov-on-Don consulate of Ukraine. Any other questions or clarification required? I have the question to the lawyer. So what Ukraine could do in order to preclude such situations? You mentioned that somebody actually crossed the border with some kind of this kind of piece of paper. So what kind of help should be provided? Legal assistance or consulate? Another consulate should be opened there. To reach the Ukrainian checkpoint. This is not the border, first of all. This is just a checkpoint. Checkpoints which are provided on both sides of the border. Ukraine has no control over that territory. The consulate cannot be opened on our own territory, on the territory of Ukraine. In this case, Ukraine can only help at least this category of the citizens who find themselves in the Crimea and help them not to violate the violation of Ukraine and to facilitate their problem with being issued the documents. If there is no possibility to come to Ukraine through the Crimean, from the Crimean territory, they have to, if people have to go to Rostov-on-Don to be issued. Since Sergei was not coming back through the Crimean crossing point. But otherwise, it's really surprising that there was no case launched against him. But this was and this is a unique case when the person who lost his documents in the Crimea, he was coming back from Rostov-on-Don, where he was issued the document. We have to, first of all, to rule out the responsibility of such persons if you are forced to go to Rostov-on-Don to be issued the documents, because without the Ukraine passport, those persons are considered to be the persons without any citizenship or the Russian Federation citizens. Though, according to our constitution, the citizens of Ukraine can be denied the right to come back to the Ukrainian territory. And again, we are talking about the procedure, which maybe have to make provision for the possibility to do that through the internet network. For example, a person appears, proves that he is the person he claims to be, and he can come back. But most important is the wish to help. Nobody says about the reform of the MFA, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Nobody says that on the part of the MFA, we actually cannot see any work on their part. They regard any criticism as the personal offense. Over the 3 years, we could see some results of their work. I'm positive that political resolution, declarations, etc., alas, this is not the merit. The merit doesn't go to the MFA of Ukraine. This situation, which is really very beneficial not only to Ukraine, to somebody else. That's why Ukraine is giving the support. But I cannot see anything, any actions which where the result would depend upon the work on our MFA on the whole, and we are talking about consulate service, no word is required. All of us, we know that if you find ourselves in a difficult situation in a foreign country, we'll have to ask the consulate to help us, and it would be associated with even more difficulties than in Ukraine. At least we are at home here. We can claim and complain, etc. But in a foreign country, the consul is the boss there, and you cannot actually lodge a complaint against him. You do know some similar cases? Well, at least one, which has been proven. A woman lost her passport, but several days after that, they returned this passport, and she could leave the territory of Crimea safely. I can ask the people actually, they phoned, they called us several times. They lost they do not have not been issued the Russian Federation passport, but they do not have their Ukraine passport, so this problem exists. Thank you. Any other questions or clarifications? If none, this brings us to the close of our press briefing. We wish you every luck in your endeavors, and see you.